All right, so I'm going to welcome everyone to our virtual industry panelists. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our little waiting room music. Thank you again for being here. Thank you to our career education counselor team for facilitating and organizing this event. I'm going to start out by introducing our panelists. And so our first panelist today, and I think what we'll do is we'll spotlight them so they show up on the screen a little bigger once we've got all of them introduced. But our first panelist today is Larry LeBeau, who is co-founder and executive director of the NewFilmmakers Los Angeles, NFMLA, an organization committed to highlighting and connecting emerging filmmakers and storytellers worldwide. Larry is a member of the Producers Guild of America and has been a faculty member at the San Francisco Art Institute, SFII, and the L Art Institute in Shanghai and Beijing, board member of BRIC Foundation, and a committee member of SAG Indie, and the co-chair of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce Entertainment, Arts and Media Committee. Larry has produced scripted and unscripted streaming series and commercials directed by talent such as James Franco, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and some of the world's leading brands, networks, and studios such as Disney, NBC, CBS, Vivo, Daily Motion, and the list goes on. Sandy is joining us as an artistic recruiter for DreamWorks. She joined the studio in early 2018 as a member of the TV creative talent management team before transitioning into recruiting. She started her career working in visual effects on the production management side of things before moving into animation at Disney Toon Studios, where she was a production resource manager overseeing internal talent in the studio. It was in this role that Sandy discovered her love for working with creative talent and helping shows build their teams. Sandy has also volunteered for the nonprofit group Women in Animation, helping them and their job opportunities, emails, and job boards, which enables her to give back to the animation community. In her free time, Sandy loves spending time with family and dogs, cooking healthy meals, and is an avid Wonder Woman collector. And I believe it's also a GCC alum. And then Minay Arkelian is an aspiring story artist, currently working as a production assistant on DreamWorks television show Trollstopia. Started her animation journey at Glendale Community College, and after 2 years transferred to CSUN, Cal State Northridge, graduated with a bachelor's in arts with a focus in animation, and is an amateur juggler. So as you can see, we have got a lot of great variety, exceptional experience in our panelists today. We've got 2 GCC alum with us, which is always very exciting. And so we're going to go ahead and start with the facilitated portion of the Q&A, which I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get our panelists spotlighted for all of you to see. All right, give us a moment here. Perfect. So we've got all our panelists on the screen. And what I'll do is I'll call on you one at a time so that you aren't speaking over each other, which is always a little bit of a challenge with virtual panels. So the first question that I have for y'all today that we've come up with in the career education department for you is, please share your education and career journey. What made you to decide to pursue the career you currently have, and what road bumps have you overcome along the way? So let's go ahead and start with Sandy.
Hello. So my education and career journey is a little non-traditional and non-linear. I went to Cal State Northridge after high school. I was focusing, back then they had a radio, TV, film major, and that's what I was focusing on. But I was really unsure about what I wanted to do. So after a few semesters, I decided to take some time off and to work and figure things out. I had the intention to go back. I fell into a job in post-production visual effects, and I did that for about 5 years. Then I moved on to a manager position at another post house. And that job really was not fulfilling to me. And I was kind of going through a time where I was again a little unsure about what I wanted to do for my long-term career path. So that's when I enrolled at GCC. And I actually thought that I wanted to be a registered dietitian. So just a complete career change. So I took all of the lower division classes for an RD, like math, science, chemistry, all of that. And a lot of classes that didn't really count toward my AA, but I was taking them, with the intention of it moving on to something else. And I got my degree at GCC in General Education Transfer Studies, and I was considering going back to CSUN, but life happened as it does. And because of friends, I was offered another job in visual effects at Rhythm and Hues Studios. And I decided it was something that I felt like I couldn't refuse at the time. And I felt like, okay, let's give it one more try. And if I don't like it, I will continue on the nutrition path. So I started working there in visual effects, and this time I really loved it. There were long hours, but it was very rewarding, and we had a great team. I felt like it really helped me build a strong foundation in the CG process. I started out as a coordinator, and I moved on to a production manager position. The one thing that was difficult about this was the hours. The hours were really long in VFX, especially when you get down to when the show is going to deliver. So I was looking into switching over to animation, which is a very kind of natural career transition. A lot of people switch back and forth between VFX and animation and games. So I was lucky to get a job at Disney Toon Studios as a digital production manager. And this role really made sense for me because of my CG background. So, but then after a few months of doing that job at Disney Toon, they restructured the studio and that position went away. So I was unsure if I was even going to have a job. But thankfully, a position in production resource management became available, and I was able to move into that position. In that position, I oversaw internal talent at the studio, helping with internal mobility and career growth, and helping shows build their teams. And it was in that position that I really discovered my love for working with creative talent and helping shows build their teams. And it's something I had been interested in even when I was in visual effects, because they had a similar role at the studio I was at, but it's just the opportunity never presented itself. I also did some very steady volunteer work for Women in Animation for about a year around that time, where I helped them with their job board. They were just getting their job board up and running. So I sourced jobs in the animation, VFX, and game industries to be included on their job board. The emails went out twice a week for that. And that was really great because I connected with a lot of people, and I felt like it gave me kind of more experience just in the talent side of things as well. And then a little over 3.5 years ago, I got a job at DreamWorks Animation as a creative talent management supervisor. This was very similar to what I was doing at Disney Toon in the resource management position. I was working with internal talent at the studio, primarily with the design and CG departments, working with internal mobility and transferring them from show to show, that type of thing. And recruiting is something I just was also always interested in. It's very similar to talent management. It's just we're working with the external talent instead of the internal talent. So a recruiter position opened up about a little over 1.5 years ago, and I transitioned into that role, starting out recruiting for TV positions, because that's where I was working on the creative talent management team, was on the TV side. And now I'm recruiting for feature and TV positions. So that is how I ended up in recruiting. A lot of people who end up in recruiting started out in something completely different. There are people that start out their careers in recruiting, but many people start out in different areas. So I really love working with talent.
Fantastic. And those of you that are sitting here attending, undecided on your specialty or what you want to do, just know that career journeys take winds and turns, and I'll transition over, same question, to Larry.
Thanks so much. Nice to see those of you who have your camera on, and for those of you who cannot have your camera on, I'm glad you're here too. I'm Larry LeBeau. I am the executive director at NewFilmmakers LA. My journey is very unusual. So I grew up in Michigan. I think it's important to let you guys know that I'm not from California. I grew up in a family who are in very, very, very blue collar jobs as auto workers and factories in Detroit and janitors and things like that, regular jobs, everyday people jobs. So arts, entertainment was not something that was things that people in Michigan do. There wasn't a lot of it around. But I knew from a very young age that I loved entertainment, loved music, I loved TV, I loved film, I loved theater. I also knew from a very young age that I did not want to be living in Michigan. I knew from like 8 years old, I was like, I want to go to Brazil. I want to go to New York. I want to go to LA. Like, I just had sort of a big vision for myself as a kid. And so for me, it's nowhere where I am now, but it started by going to an audition for Radio Disney when I was a kid. So I actually got a gig as a performer when I was 13 years old for Radio Disney. So I started touring around the United States. And I told my mom at 16, I'm like, Mom, in order for me to do more stuff and have an agent and get more work in the entertainment industry, I have to live in New York or LA. That's what everyone at Radio Disney says is the next thing in your career, you have to be in New York or LA. So I convinced my mom at 16 to let me finish 11th and 12th grade in 6 months. I finished 11th and 12th grade in 6 months. So graduated high school at 16 and moved to New York City by myself at 16 years old. I know, it's crazy. She didn't want to let me do it, but let's just say I was a very good negotiator. So it happened. So at 16 years old, I'm in New York City, riding around the subways, going to auditions that my agent and manager are sending me on every day. It was an amazing experience for me because I got to meet casting directors, I got to meet cinematographers, I got to meet costumers, I got to meet makeup artists, I got to meet every sound recordist, I got to meet everybody who was working on sets. And so at 18 years old, I moved to Los Angeles. Part of my experiences in New York at that age were also going to film festivals. So I had been going to Tribeca Film Festival, the Havana Film Festival in New York, the Gen Art Film Festival in New York, and I really fell in love with that environment. When I moved out to LA, I decided that if I was going to continue acting, I needed to do more work. I needed to be making work of my own. So a friend and I basically pulled together the resources to make our own short film. Another friend of mine in New York found out I had made the film, and we started a production company together. That's where all of my work in branded entertainment came from. And at the same time, in LA, I couldn't really find any organization that I felt really brought the film community together throughout the year. So I started a nonprofit, 501c3, which is NewFilmmakers LA. And that is what I do today. So we have 4 full-time staff members. We work with a lot of the studios. A lot of the studios are sponsors and partners of our organization. Streamers like Netflix we work with. And we're all about sort of incubating new talent, helping new talent promote themselves, get themselves out there, and helping be a resource to sometimes recruiters, but more so creative executives who are looking for the next new exciting voice in film and TV. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my story. And yeah, I'll pass it on to Shelby.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. And last but not least, and I'll switch up the order next time, so I'll keep you all on your toes. But last but not least for this first question is Monet.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending today. Let's see. So my journey started back in Iran, where I was born and raised. I was studying management at a university, and I was about 2 years into it. I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but then we had a chance to move to the US. That was decided. So I started looking into other career paths. What I noticed is that I always liked animation or arts, but never actually considered it. So at that point, I decided to take some classes, and I fell in love with everything about animation. So when we moved to the US, I went straight to GCC and started from there. At the same time, I was also working in data entry with the counseling departments. So I spent 2 years at GCC, did all my GEs, which honestly was kind of hard going back to zero because I did my university at a different school. I couldn't transfer my credits, so I had to go back to zero. That was a bit hard, but seeing where I am now, I think that was worth it to go through with it. So after 2 years in GCC, I transferred to CSUN. I got to work in data entry again there. And those two jobs helped me with my first internship with DreamWorks, which was with the training departments. So in my second to last semester at CSUN, I applied to a bunch of internships. The one I received was the training departments, which it was more about they did data entry, video editing. They set up these classes. So because of my history in employment, I was able to get accepted into that internship. And that semester was just a lot of fun, but also a lot of challenges happened because I was a full-time student, I had a part-time job, and I was doing an internship. So managing all those together was a bit of a challenge, but I learned so much in my internship. I met so many new people. I didn't know there's so many positions in animation. That was mind-blowing. So just the sheer amount of information you get. One of the people I met during that internship was the manager to the show that I am currently. And I asked them if they had any production internships for spring. They said they do, but it's already promised to someone else, but they offered me a summer internship. And I accepted immediately. And that's important because what happened in spring was the pandemic and schools went virtual, and DreamWorks decided to not pursue any more internships except the ones that were already extended. So I was one of the lucky few. There were only 6 interns. I was the only production intern, TV production intern. And we got to do this test run of virtual internships, figuring out how to still be proactive, socialize, meet people. And it had its challenges, but I think it was a great experience. It absolutely worked out. And again, I got to meet a lot of great people. And well, the juggling story comes from there too. So in my final presentation, I had an animation of a character juggling because there's a lot happening in production. You got to juggle everything. I spent a lot of time on that animation, and someone from DreamWorks saw that clip and reached out to me that was a very impressive animation. Do you juggle yourself? And I said, no, but I did a lot of research to do that. And he said, well, would you like to learn? And well, as an intern, you say yes to everything. So I said, yes, I would love to learn. And that's how I started. And I just, it's a great exercise. It's pretty fun. So I'm happy that I said yes. But after my internship, I was just looking for other PA positions and working on drawing because eventually I would like to do storyboarding. During that time, I had an interview for another position as a PA for a feature show. I didn't get that position because they wanted someone more experienced. But after a few weeks, I got my old team that I interned on reached back, and they said they wanted me back for a PA position, and that's where I am today.
Fantastic. And really talks about the power of internships, all of y'all that are currently in school. I think that transitions well for me to talk about the next question, which some of you answered a little bit, but you can add any more detail that you'd like, which is asking about your current position. So what is your current position and how would you describe your work? So let's go ahead and let's start with Larry.
Sorry, slow down, mute myself. Yeah, so my current position is as executive director at NewFilmmakers LA. And essentially what that role is overseeing all of the programs that our organization runs, overseeing the administration of our organization. So that's things like staffing, payroll, insurance, accounting, all of the things that I'm sure are very unattractive to most of you. Those are sort of like the business parts of the job that I have responsibility for. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit 501c3. So there's a lot of governance with our tax status. We have a board of directors. So I work with our board of directors to ensure that we're fundraising the way that we need to be. That's a huge part of my job. Just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean that we don't have to pay for things and pay our staff members. So I'm responsible for creating an annual budget, getting an annual budget approved with the board of directors, and managing that annual budget all year. So making sure revenue that needs to come in is on target and that we're meeting our goals throughout the year to have the money that we need to continue to operate, to make sure that all the incoming expenses are getting paid out, to make sure that payroll is consistently going on, to making sure we're following employment laws that are sometimes changing, working with our staff on all of the different programs that we run throughout the year, making sure everything that we're putting out public facing is on brand with our organization, leading collaborations and partnerships with other organizations in the community. So we work with a lot of other nonprofits that do similar work. We work with organizations like the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences on 2 of our festivals, and that is the organization behind the Oscars. We work with, as I mentioned, companies like Netflix and Warner Media and HBO. And sometimes we do standalone programs where we run artist searches for those companies, or we're making recommendations of films for acquisitions to those companies. And we do a lot of public programming. So things that, you yourselves as students would want to come and attend and learn, right? So we have public panels, and those panels are they run the gamut, right? So they can be panels on documentary filmmaking, panels on animation, panels on sound mixing, panels on screenwriting, panels on show running, panels on producing for television, panels on producing for film. So it's constantly, I guess the bigger picture part of my job is constantly managing and maintaining relationships as well as building new relationships, and then making sure I have the systems in place for us to continually operate in a sustainable manner. And at the end of the day, in my role, everything comes back to me, right? I can't point fingers if a staff member misses something, because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for overseeing that. So the role has a lot of responsibility, but it's also very rewarding because we get to help so many filmmakers. We get to open up a lot of doors for filmmakers. We get to bring the community at large together. So we get to bring together students. We get to bring together early career filmmakers. We get to bring together very established career professionals. We get to bring in industry. And so for me, that full circle part of my job is really exciting.
All right, perfect. So any of you more business-minded students, more leadership-minded students, that is a role inside the film industry. And like Monet said earlier, knowing exactly how much is in the world of animation in the film industry, there's so many options and so many niches. With that being said, let's hear more about recruitment from Sandy.
Hi. So yes, as you know, I'm an artistic recruiter for TV and feature. I recruit for art roles such as like character designer, art director, visual development artist, and CG artist roles such as modelers, surfacers, lighters, animators on the TV side. And I've also recruited for some technical positions like pipeline technical directors and positions like that. So my day-to-day includes a lot of communication with candidates and hiring managers, sourcing for talent that can be through applicants, but also on LinkedIn or Instagram. Say if we're looking for artists, a lot of artists have their Instagrams like, really updated with artwork. And extending offers to candidates, participating in events and panels. So we do a lot of events like Lightbox Expo and CTN and portfolio reviews for different colleges, things like that. We also partner very directly with our HR team. I mean, recruiting is part of HR, but with the HR partners, we work a lot with them, and also the artist managers on the TV and feature side to figure out strategy for, can this position be filled internally, or are we going to have to go external in order to get this position filled? So one of the unique things, having come from the production management side and visual effects, where you're working on like one project, in recruiting and overhead positions like this, you're working on every show, like every project that's at the studio. So that's something that I enjoy as well, because I really like having the overall picture. So that's kind of my recruiting time in a nutshell.
Perfect, fantastic. And so let's go over to the production assistant role with Monet.
So I would say production assistant is more like a secretary position. You do a lot of, you join every meeting. Most of it is you take notes from all of those meetings. Your main job in production is to make sure everyone is on track with what they're supposed to do and everything connects with each other. And so far, for instance, in our show, we had like 3 different teams, production teams, and each team had about 5 episodes average active in production in different stages. So keeping track of where each one is headed and like they are meeting all their needs, that's part of the production assistant's job. And along with that is there's a lot of designs coming in. You got to make sure all of those designs are approved in the right way, because sometimes there's discrepancies with what the artist might misunderstand something and might turn in something else. So that's again part of production's assistant job, is to be aware of that. And other than that, I would say there's helping out with anything everyone else might need. So for instance, special cases come along. We had this one episode, characters were just singing, and everyone would walk in and like hold hands, sing. It was a nice scene. But our partner studio messaged that, can you guys prep a document of who's singing what line, where, with what frame, what's happening here. And so part of the job was to go in and figure out from the animatic who's singing from what frame to the other, what words are they saying. It was a bit meticulous, but things like that come along too. So making specific documents to communicate what needs to be done eventually. That's part of it too.
All right, fantastic. And for y'all panelists, I heard some answers to the next question, and I'm looking at time, so I'm going to actually skip ahead to question number 4, which is, what qualifications, education level, training, certifications, licenses, experience, those kind of things, what qualifications are required for entry into this kind of work? And if you participate in hiring, what impresses you the most when you are considering hiring someone? So let's go ahead and start with Sandy this time.
Hi. For recruiting, in general, having some past experience with recruiting for animation, having some past experience with animation, VFX, or games, or perhaps working in some sort of talent management or recruitment position in somewhere in the entertainment industry is generally required for entry into recruiting and animation. However, we do have entry-level positions in recruiting, like recruiting coordinators or recruiting assistants who could be right out of college and don't have any of that experience yet, but do have an interest in moving into that field. So there's those opportunities as well. As far as what impresses me most, like when I'm considering hiring somebody. So the first impression in general is going to be the portfolio and resume, because I recruit for artistic roles. If it's for like the recruiters who recruit for like production assistants and production coordinators, it's going to be more about their resume. But for me, it's more about their portfolio or reel. So if the portfolio or website is set up in a really organized manner, it's really clear what this candidate wants to do. Like if they want to be a character designer on their portfolio page on their website, it's clear, like they have a section with character design, I can easily find it. It has like includes like only their best work, quality over quantity, I always want to stress. And the resume, as long as it's like clear and easy to read and consistent, that's something that is also really helpful. Just kind of going back to the portfolio and website, sometimes candidates will, of course, it's understandable that people are unsure, especially if they're early career, what they want to do. But you might want to, if you have a few things that you're wanting to get into, you may want to have a couple of different websites that focus on something different. Like if you want to be a character designer potentially, but then you also want to be a motion graphics artist, you might want to make a separate website for each one, so that we as recruiters aren't kind of confused about what it is that you're looking to get into. So yeah, I know we're low on time, so.
All right, that's a great answer, and that's important for all of you to keep in mind. If you don't have a resume yet, we have, I put in the chat and I'll repost it, a link to our career services team, our career services live, and portfolios. Of course, you're probably working on those with your classes as well, but can also work with a career counselor. But let's go ahead and shift this question over to Minay.
So a PI position is considered an entry-level position, so no specific requirements that you need to have, but there are some things that are helpful if you have it on your resume. So if you are just proactive in animation, like volunteering with Women in Animation, Lightbox, CTN, or if you have an animation club, you can be part of it and have any positions to show that you are very much an active member of your club, and those will be helpful, and also some software knowledge. So just like the Google Suite and Microsoft, I would say Excel and Words are the most important ones. ShotGrid is a specific software we use in production. You can get a free trial of it and also watch tutorials of it. It's very easy, a bit overwhelming at first, but it's easy to learn. It used to be called Shotgun, so tutorials might be under that name. We just changed this name to ShotGrid. And yeah, having some other knowledge of softwares that I use in production, like if it's TV, like Storyboard Pro, Photoshop, if it's a 3D show, Maya, having all of those, it's gonna be helpful for your resume to, I think, pop.
Fantastic. And I'll switch right over to Larry.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that Minay and Sandy have said are absolutely spot on. Sandy, I love what you said about making sure if you are interested in different career pathways, that you try to keep those separate in your portfolio and in your resume. A lot of times we'll have paid internship positions where somebody's applying to be an event graphic designer, right? And they'll submit a portfolio that's very much like art graphic design, not event or promotional graphic design. So, just try to be specific with the content that you're sharing to a recruiter. Definitely the resume, as Sandy mentioned. I love what Minay mentioned before this question, which I think ties into this question, which is that I think you have to go into any role expecting that you're going to be doing some things that you didn't expect, right? So Minay mentioned, like, there's sometimes she gets tasks that can feel very tedious, and it's just a lot of sort of really careful, meticulous work. That's a lot of what I I have to do every day to get to the gold, to get to the really good stuff, to make it possible for things to happen. So I think like going in, I'll leave it with this because I think Sandy and Monet did such a good job covering everything else. I'll just leave it with this. I think passion for each thing you're going to tackle in a job is really, really important. You know, if you were in a PA position, let's say on a set, and your job that day is to go get somebody a coffee and they ask for cream and sugar, make it the best coffee you can possibly make it. Be super excited about doing that, right? And I think the other thing outside of passion that I would say is really important is curiosity. Being really curious, doing as much research as you can before you go into a job interview, knowing what that team is all about, what that department does, having researched the recruiter or other people that you may be meeting with, knowing the work of the company that you're meeting with, some of their projects, if it's an entertainment company, the gaming company, really knowing their games, maybe knowing their characters. I think that kind of curiosity is really important.
All right, perfect. What we're going to do soon is go out into breakout rooms, but I am going to give the panelists one more chance to share with the big, larger group. And I'm going to kind of combine a couple questions. I don't feel like your answer has to be long, a couple just takeaways, but what I want to hear from y'all is if there's anything you wish you knew about your field or career when you were a college student, or what advice you'd have for college students. So generally what I'm asking is, thinking of the audience here, what would you like to share with the big group before we go into smaller groups? And we can go ahead and start with Monet.
Again, I think I mentioned this a bit earlier, but just the amount of positions there is in animation. This is, I think, more specific to DreamWorks, but like an animatic editor is someone who only edits animatics, and then you have post editors who do all the color corrections and all of those. So, and then you have assistant animatic editors. So there's plenty of positions that we don't know, or like we have a TeamWorks team that plans parties for the when there's a movie release or something. So there's plenty of positions, and I guess as an advice, I would say make sure to seek feedback and be nice when you receive the feedback. At the same time, be a bit more picky which ones you're going to follow, not in the sense that people give you bad advice, but sometimes they don't know where you want to end up. So some advice can derail you if you want to follow everyone's advice when you hear them. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Fantastic. Let's go over to Larry.
Yeah, I'd leave it at be ready to be a great communicator. Communication is so important in any job or in any company. And go in being ready to take full responsibility. Set ways for yourself to make sure you're not missing things, to be really thorough. That kind of like responsibility and communication are, I think, two of the most important parts of my job. And so I'd say they're key things for most of the fields that I could imagine you guys may be going into. So leave it at that.
Perfect. And last but not least, we'll hear from Sandy.
Yeah, I think that Larry and Monet pretty much covered some good topics. I would like to add, as far as if you do get that coveted interview, to make sure to send a follow-up thank you note. You'd be surprised how many people do not do that. So you can send it to the recruiter that you worked with, and they will forward it along to the hiring managers. And it doesn't have to be long, just a quick thank you, 2-3 sentences about how much you enjoyed meeting with them, you know, something like that. So I would like to just stress how nice and important that can be.
Yes, leaving that good impression after the interview. We always get, oh, I'm done with it, I'm going to relax. But make sure before you relax, you send that thank you. And if you haven't done that before, our Career Center team can help. Okay, so here's what's going to happen next. I'm very excited for this. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.